Chapter 16 Bread. I had my first corn at the end of December. It wasn't a lot of corn. I didn't want to eat the corn. I decided to keep all the seeds. My goal was to put the seeds in the ground again and have more corn later. I thought, I will need some pots for the seeds. I will look for clay around the island. I found some clay. I tried to make a pot. I had no success at the beginning. People in England made beautiful pots. But I didn't know the whole process well enough to be able to make pots. However, I tried again and again. It was a long process, but after 2 months of experimenting and trying, I made 2 large pots. I put the pots into round baskets. I put dry grass between the baskets and the pots. The dry grass and the baskets protected the pots very well. I continued to make small pots. Their quality improved. I also made long but not very high pots. I put sea water in these pots. When the water was gone, I had salt. One day, I found a broken piece of one pot in the fire. The fire made the piece as hard as stone, and it was very red too. This gave me a good idea. I took one pot and made a fire around the pot. The pot was very hard after a few hours. I was happy with the result. I thought, I will also need a tool to make flour from seeds. I took a big piece of hard wood for that. I made a hole in the wood. Then I took another piece of hard wood and I broke the seeds in this hole with the wood. The flour stayed on the bottom of the hole. I thought, I will need something to bake bread. I had an idea. I mixed the flour with water. Then I took 2 stones. I put the stones near the fire. When they were very hot, I put the bread between the stones. This was how I made my first bread on the island. It was during my 3rd year on the island. The bread wasn't perfect, but I liked it a lot. It was my first bread after a long time. I thought about traveling around the island by sea. I thought that it was possible to make a canoe from a big tree. I found one big tree. I cut the tree and I started to make a hole in it. One day, when I was working on the canoe, I realized that I didn't know how to move it from the forest to the beach. I tried everything to move the canoe. I even thought about digging a channel, but it was all useless. There was a hill between the forest and the beach. I was really sad that I had to leave the canoe in the forest. Many days of work were lost. I didn't believe that I could make such a mistake. I had to plan my work better next time. Chapter 17 Canoe. During my 4th year on the island, my clothes were already very old. I started to use the skins of the animals. I made a cap and other clothes from the skins. They kept me cool in the strong sun, and they protected me from the heavy rain. But the clothes weren't enough. I also needed an umbrella. It took me some time to make the umbrella, but I was successful in the end. I was quite happy with my life on the island. I had everything what I needed for my life on the island. My life on the island continued for the next 5 years. During this time I decided to make a new canoe. The canoe was smaller and it was easier to move. I wanted to travel around the island in it. When the canoe was finished, I put food, water and tools in it. I was ready for the trip. I wanted to test if I could go around the island in my canoe. The trip started during my 6th year on the island on the 6th of June. The beginning of my trip wasn't easy for me. I was in danger when my journey started. I had to go around some rocks in the sea. When I wanted to go back to the coast, I realized that there was a strong current. The current was taking me away from the island. The situation was horrible. I was scared. I thought, I will die in the open sea. I didn't have enough food and water. For a long journey, I fought very hard against the current for 2 hours. Finally I managed to get close to my island. I could continue my trip around the island. Now I knew that I was stronger than the currents around the island. It made me feel good. Soon, I found a small river which went further inside the island. But I got nowhere because soon the river was very narrow. Stones blocked the way. I couldn't continue. I got off my canoe. I went to explore this part of the island. It wasn't far from the part of the island which I knew. I even found the way to my house in the valley. I was so tired from the trip that I fell asleep. I was woken up by a voice. The voice was saying my name. Robinson, where are you? Robinson, where are you? First I was scared, but then I saw my parrot pull on top of the fence. He knew this sentence from me, and he was saying it with the same intonation as me. I was surprised to see him here. I thought, why wasn't he at home? Still, I was happy to hear somebody talk to me. I left the canoe where it was and I returned home with the parrot. I didn't make another such trip for a year. I stayed in my house most of the time. I kept making tools and pots. I was better at making baskets. Chapter 18 Foot. It was 11 years since my first moment on the island. One day, I noticed that I didn't have much gunpowder. It started to worry me. I needed gunpowder to kill animals. My first goat was very old. It was too late to try to find a male for her. I wanted meat, but I didn't have the heart to kill her. One day, she died a natural death. I thought, with less and less gunpowder I will have to find another way to get meat. I will make some trap. Tomorrow, I will start to make the trap. I wasn't successful at the beginning. But then I caught 3 young goats. They were 1 male and 2 females. I took the goats home with me. I kept the goats inside a small area with a fence around it. But it was too small for 3 goats. I made a fence for them around a big area. It took me 3 months to build this fence, but the area was very nice. There was a lot of grass and water for them. After some time, the young goats were very calm. Soon, they ate out of my hand. In 2 years, I had 12 goats inside my fence. And in 3 years I had more than 20 goats. I had a lot of milk and meat thanks to this. I experimented a few times, and I was able to make cheese and butter. My table was full now and I had a lot of animals around me. I had my old dog, goats and Pole, my parrot. The only thing which I still missed was somebody for a conversation. One day, I went to the part of the sea where the strong current was. On the way there, I thought about how strange I looked. I had a big hat, a short jacket and short trousers. They were all made from animal skin. I didn't have socks or shoes. But I put some goat skins around my feet. I had 2 belts. One belt was for the gun and knife, and one belt for the gunpowder. I also carried a basket on my back, and an umbrella above my head. My beard was very long. I realized that life on the island made me a different person. One day, I was walking on the beach. I was going to check my canoe. Then I saw something surprising. I saw a mark of a human foot on the sand. I looked around, but I didn't see anybody. I was scared. I ran back to my house. I was so scared that it was difficult to sleep at night. I started to think, maybe it was all just my imagination. Or maybe it was the mark of my own foot and it was stupid to be scared. This thought made me feel better. I left my house and I went to see the mark in the sand again. Chapter 19 Cannibals. When I came to the mark of the foot, I saw that it was much bigger than the size of my foot. It was impossible that it was my foot. I was scared again. I started to panic. I thought, I will destroy my corn fields and my valley house. I have to hide my activity on the island. I was so afraid that I couldn't sleep the whole night. I finally slept a little in the morning. My head was clear when I woke up. Now, it wasn't so strange that people lived on the islands around. I thought, maybe it was their first visit here. Maybe they won't come again. I felt better after these thoughts. But still, I wanted to be safe. During the following month I made another fence around my house and I made holes in the fence through which I could easily fire guns if I was attacked. Now I had a house which was very well protected. Nobody could come easily near me. I also worried about my goats. I divided the animals into two groups. I built a smaller fence in another part of the island. I put one group of the goats there. It took me a lot of time, but my animals were safe. It was the 16th year of my life on the island when something very sad happened. My dog died. I was crying for 3 days. I went to my goats and I told them how sad I was. They didn't understand my words, but I felt that they understood me. They felt my emotions. They were unusually calm and quiet. It was now 2 years after the foot in the sand on the beach. One day, when I was walking on the beach, I thought that I saw a canoe far in the sea. I wasn't sure, so I just continued my walk. Then I saw a thing which shocked me. The beach was full of parts of human bodies. Heads, hands, feet, fingers and teeth were everywhere. There was a black place after a fire. I was angry and scared at the same time. They were here again, I thought. I couldn't look at this horrible scene for a long time. I had a horrible feeling in my stomach. I went back home and I thought about what to do. I decided not to go out to sea with my canoe because I had no chance against a group of cannibals in the open sea. I also decided not to use guns because the sound of a gun was very loud. But I always had guns with me for protection. I started to think that maybe in the future I could kill some of the cannibals and save their prisoners. I started to look for a place near the beach where I could hide and prepare for the attack. Then I changed my opinion. I thought that it wasn't reasonable to fight the cannibals. I didn't know these people. They didn't attack me. Maybe it wasn't good to attack them. Finally, I stopped the preparations and I decided to act only if they attacked me. First, Chapter 20 Cave. I was hiding my activity on the island as much as possible. I was very careful. I tried not to be loud. I was worried when I made a fire. But I needed fire because I needed to cook. So when I made a fire, I tried to make as little smoke as possible. Smoke could go very high and it could be seen from a distance. Once I discovered a small cave in the forest near the beach. I went inside, but when my eyes were okay with the dark, I saw two eyes which were looking at me. I jumped outside. I was scared to death. I waited but nothing happened. I went slowly to the beginning of the cave and I listened. I heard something. It sounded as if there was somebody injured inside. I took my gun and I entered the cave slowly. When my eyes could see again, I discovered an old goat. It was dying in the cave. I returned to the cave the next day. I found that the goat was dead. I looked around the place and I saw that it was very safe. I thought, it will be a good place near the beach where I could hide. So I brought some of my guns and some gunpowder. There. It was 23 years since my first moment on this island. I was living comfortably now, and I had many animals around me. Cole was repeating my name and some other words very nicely. I had 2 more parrots and I taught the parrots to say my name. I had more than 30 goats. It was the last month of my 23rd year on the island. I was walking to my fields early one morning when I saw fire on the beach. I immediately returned to my house and I prepared all my guns. I took my telescope and I went close to the beach. I hid myself and I watched what was happening on the beach. I saw 9 naked people. They had 2 canoes. It looked like that they were waiting for the high tide. When they left, I went to the beach. The beach was full of blood and bones again. This made me angry. I will kill as many of the cannibals as possible next time. When I see them, I thought. But they didn't return for a long time. One day in the evening after a big storm, something happened which disturbed me. I heard the sound of a gun at sea. I got out of my house and I saw a light which was coming from the sea. A second shot followed. I thought that it was coming from a ship in danger which was asking for help. I took a lot of dry wood and I ran to the beach where I made a big fire. They probably saw the fire because they fired again. I thought, I will speak to somebody tonight. This is great. I kept the fire until midnight but nobody came to my beach. It was strange. It was something what I couldn't understand. Maybe in the morning I will know more. I thought. Chapter 21 Visitors. The next day in the morning, I saw the ship. The ship stopped far from the beach. The ship looked empty. I didn't understand it. I expected the people who fired the gun yesterday. I really wanted to communicate to somebody. I missed communication with real people very much. I took my canoe and I decided to go to the ship. I wanted to see if somebody survived. The ship looked Spanish, and it was completely destroyed. When I got closer, I saw a dog. He was very happy to see me. I gave him bread and I gave him water. He was hungry and extremely thirsty. I found nobody on the ship. What happened to the men from the ship? I thought. It was very strange. I didn't have an answer to this question. It was a mystery. There were many boxes with different things on the ship. Some boxes were small. Some boxes were big. Many big boxes were full of bottles with alcohol. But these boxes were too heavy. I couldn't take the boxes on the canoe. I found guns and gunpowder. I took them to the canoe. I also found some other useful things. I returned to the island in the evening with several small boxes on my canoe. I had some new shirts and also gold, silver and a lot of gunpowder. The gunpowder was important for me. On the island, gunpowder was more useful than money or gold. There was something else which I needed very much. I needed shoes. I found 2 pairs of shoes on board the ship. I took the shoes with me. I put all my new things in the cave. I made 5 trips to the ship. I took everything useful for me. Then I hid the canoe. Everything went back to normal. Time went quickly. I often thought about the men from the ship and the cannibals. On the beach. It was one night in March when I dreamed that 2 canoes with cannibals landed on the beach. One of their prisoners ran away. He came to my house. I saved him. Then he became my friend. He helped me go through the dangerous waters around the island. I woke up, but the dream stayed in my mind. I realized that with someone's help, it could be possible to escape from the island. Maybe I could save one of the prisoners of the cannibals. I decided to watch the beach more. I went every day around the beach for the next 2 years. I hoped to see the canoes. My wish became reality one afternoon. I saw 5 canoes with more than 30 men. On the beach. I couldn't attack so many men. I had to wait. I watched the visitors. With my telescope. The visitors made a fire and they started to dance around it. I also saw 2 other men. They were tied. They were prisoners. The 2 tied men were taken to the fire after a while. One was beaten and killed. The cannibals painted their bodies with his blood. It was like a theater. But this wasn't a theater. It was real. It was horrible. But I couldn't do anything. There were too many cannibals. The second man waited on the side. When the cannibals didn't look, the second man jumped up and he started to run away. He was running in my direction. I ran to the beach and I hid behind a tree. I saw that he was followed only by 2 cannibals. This was the right moment to save the prisoner. The man ran as fast as possible, but the cannibals were closer and closer to him. Their speed was faster than his. Chapter 22 Friday. I prepared 2 guns and I waited behind the tree. The prisoner ran directly to my tree. But he didn't see me. I didn't move. Then he ran around me. I was still hidden behind the tree. When the first cannibal ran close to me, I jumped from behind the tree. He was shocked. I shot him. The second cannibal saw this. He tried to shoot an arrow at me. I had to shoot him too. The prisoner stopped when he heard the shots and he turned. He was scared. I smiled at him. I showed him that it was okay to come closer. He came to me. He went down to his knees. He put his head on the ground. Then he took my foot. He put my foot on his head. I showed him to stand up. He stood up. He looked at the dead cannibals. He went to their bodies. He looked at the holes in their bodies. He probably couldn't understand what happened to the cannibals. It was unbelievable to him. He took the arrows from the dead men. We took the bodies of the cannibals. We hid the bodies in the forest near. Then we went into the deeper forest. I took the man to my cave. The cave was my secret. Nobody could find us there. I gave him bread, meat and some water. He was so tired that he fell asleep. Almost immediately, I had an opportunity to look at him. I saw that he was young, slim but very strong. I thought that he was about 25 years old. He had long black hair, dark skin and a pleasant face. I let him sleep and I went outside. I stayed near the cave and I watched for the cannibals. But they didn't look for us. 3 hours later, the man came out of the cave. He showed me how happy he was. That he was alive and safe. I started speaking to him. I named him Friday. It was Friday when I saved his life. I told him my name and I taught him yes and no. We stayed in the cave that night. The next day, we went on top of the hill. I saw through my telescope that the canoes were gone. We were alone on the island. We went carefully to the beach. First we went to the place where we hid the bodies of the dead cannibals. When we found the bodies, Friday wanted to eat the cannibals. I was angry. I showed to Friday that it wasn't good to eat them. Here I understood that Friday was also a cannibal. We buried the cannibals. Then we walked to the beach. What we saw was horrible. There were human bones all around. The sand was red with blood. I asked Friday to collect all the body parts. I prepared a big fire. I decided to burn the body parts in the fire. We went to my house. I made a little tent for Friday between the 2 fences which were around my house. I took all his weapons away. I wanted to feel safe. After a while, I realized that I didn't have to do it. Friday was a very good and honest man. He was like a child to me. I was like a father to him. In many situations later he showed me that he was willing to give his life for me. I was very happy to have Friday on the island. I began teaching him everything. What he needed to know about life like a European. First I taught him some new words. I started with hi, hello, bye, thank you. It wasn't easy at the beginning. But I was patient because I was happy that I could speak to somebody. Chapter 23 Conversation. 2 days later, I shot a young goat. Friday was scared of the gun. He didn't understand how such a small thing could kill a goat. He didn't want to touch the gun. Later I saw how he talked to the gun. He probably asked the gun not to kill him. We took the goat. We made a nice soup. Before the soup was finished, Friday went to the forest and he brought some herbs. He put the herbs into the soup. The herbs were similar to pepper. The soup smelled fantastic and it tasted fantastic too. We cooked some of the goat meat the next day with sauce. Again, Friday brought some herbs and also plants. The herbs made the sauce taste great. They made a big difference. And we made a nice salad from the plants. I taught Friday how to prepare corn and bake bread. He could do it as well as me a few days later. Then we started expanding my garden to have more corn. In all activities, Friday helped me a lot. He was also very good at catching fish. Our cooperation was simply great. We were a good team. I wanted to teach Friday to speak English very well. I wanted to teach him English as fast as possible. I wanted to be a good teacher. I took my role very seriously. I thought about the best method to teach him English. When I spoke to him fast and when I used all the words and grammar, he didn't understand me. So I tried to speak mainly in the present. And I used simple words. I also said only short sentences. This way, Friday understood more. We spoke about many topics. When Friday didn't understand something, I pointed at it. Or I tried to explain the word to him. If it didn't help, I made a picture of the thing in the sand. Soon Friday started to understand many of my sentences in the present. He also started to use some words. His pronunciation was very bad at the beginning. But it wasn't important for me. I understood him. And I was very happy that somebody spoke to me. Friday was a good student. He was clever and he was improving quickly. Soon he could say some words like an Englishman. Of course not all the words. But the words which he said correctly made me very happy. I saw that Friday very often repeated aloud what I said. I think that it also helped him to learn so fast. I thought, learning a language is quite easy. You only need to copy what you hear, and if you don't understand something, you need a picture of it. Then you need a lot of practice. This is the best system. Friday's progress was fast. He was able to talk more and more every day. In a couple of months we could have a basic simple conversation. Friday liked my tools. They were very interesting for him. He especially liked the telescope. He borrowed the telescope very often. He went to one of the hills. And he watched everything around. Once, I asked him about his people and how he became a prisoner. He told me that they ate human meat like their opponents. In fact, in the past he did a ritual on the other side of my island. He was probably one of the cannibals who I saw a long time ago. He told me about the sea and the currents in the sea. Thanks to Friday, I learned about the history, culture and traditions of his people. Chapter 24 Knife. I told Friday my personal story and I described England and Europe to him. I told him about our cities, schools, ships and traveling around the world. I told him that education was important in Europe and that we studied from books. It was all new to him. Friday's people didn't need schools on the islands. They had all what they needed for their life. When I felt that I could trust him enough, I showed him how gunpowder worked. I taught him how to use a gun. I gave him a knife and a belt. He was happy with my presence. He said that he saw a similar knife before. I asked him to tell me more. He explained that his people saved white men from a small boat and that they still lived with them. He counted 17 Europeans who lived with his people. I thought that these men could be the sailors from the ship which came to my island some time ago. They probably saved themselves in a boat. I didn't find anybody alive when I went on board. Friday told me that they were okay. I was happy to hear that some Europeans lived not very far from my island. I started to plan how to meet the Europeans. The next day, we went on a small trip around the island. First we went to the cross where I wanted to mark another day. "What is it?" asked Friday when we came to the cross. I explained that we have 7 days in a week. These days are Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday and Sunday. Saturday and Sunday are also called weekend. When Friday heard the word Friday, he laughed. I explained to him that I saved him on Friday. That's why I called him Friday. Now, he fully understood the meaning of his name. During the walk, Friday told me, "If we build a canoe and go to my island, I will tell my people how you saved my life." I took Friday to the other side of the island. I showed him my canoe there. But he said, "This canoe is too small for the 2 people. We have to make a bigger canoe." So, we started making a bigger canoe. We had to cut a big tree and I showed him how to cut the inside and form a canoe. It took us a month to do this in 2 days. To move it to the beach. The canoe was ready and we were ready too. The day before we wanted to go, Friday went to the beach. He came back very quickly. He looked very scared. Before I asked him what happened, he said that there were 3 canoes on the beach. He was scared because he thought the cannibals came to find him. He said, "There is a war between 2 groups of local people. We are neighbors but we don't like each other. We had many conflicts in the past. There was never peace. We kill each other whenever we can. When they see me, they will kill me." I told him, "Don't worry. We are strong. And maybe they didn't come for you today. We will see." We took 15 guns. We went on top of a hill. We saw 14 cannibals, 2 prisoners and 3 canoes on the beach. They stopped close to the place where the forest was near the beach. Thanks to this it was easier to attack the cannibals and save the prisoners. We went to them quietly through the forest. I thought about my right to kill the cannibals. I had no reason to shoot so many people who did nothing wrong to me. After some thinking I decided only to watch and attack the cannibals only if it was necessary. Chapter 25 Father. When we were very close to the beach, we saw that the cannibals were around the fire. They started eat the first of their prisoners. The second prisoner was still alive. He wasn't one of Friday's people. He was European. The cannibals wanted to eat him too. I decided to save him if it was possible. We moved closer to the cannibals but we were still hidden behind the trees. 12 cannibals were still around the fire, but 2 cannibals went for the white man. When I saw this, I prepared the guns and I asked Friday to do the same. Then, we fired quickly at the cannibals from 6 guns. We killed 3 and seriously injured 2 of the cannibals. The rest jumped up, but they didn't know where to run. They didn't know from which direction the danger came. Some men ran to their canoes. Some cannibals stayed on the beach. We continued to shoot and we shot 3 other cannibals. After that we took our guns and we ran to the beach. We shouted very loud. I ran to the prisoner and Friday shot the nearest cannibal. I freed the European. He said something in Spanish to me. I gave him a gun. He was weak but he could shoot from a gun if some cannibal attacked him. The cannibals were shocked by our sudden attack. Our unusual guns scared them a lot. Only 2 cannibals tried to fight us. We shot them with our guns. Friday fought very well. He quickly killed 1 cannibal who was injured. The second injured cannibal ran into the forest. Friday ran after him and he killed him with his knife. Only 3 cannibals were able to run away. They jumped into their canoe and they started to leave. Friday shot at the cannibals, but he didn't hit them. It was dangerous to let them go because they could tell their people about us. We wanted to jump into one canoe and follow the cannibals. But to our surprise, we found another man on the bottom of the canoe. He was scared. He didn't see the fight. He only heard it. Ropes around his neck were very tight. He was in great pain and it was difficult for him to breathe. I quickly cut the ropes. When Friday saw him, he started crying. Then he laughed, and he hugged the man. Then he jumped and began dancing around him. Then he cried and laughed at the same time. When the strongest emotions were gone, Friday told me that the prisoner was his father. I felt tears in my eyes when I saw the son's love for his father. This happy incident delayed us and the cannibals were already gone. Friday massaged his father's hands and feet to bring more blood to them. Soon his father felt much better. When they talked, Friday suddenly jumped up and ran to the forest as fast as he could. When he came back, he had a bottle full of fresh water. He gave the water to his father who was extremely thirsty. After he drank, I asked Friday to give the rest of the water to the Spanish. He needed water very much too. The Spanish thanked me a lot. He couldn't walk. He was very weak. I asked Friday to massage his feet too. It helped him. Then I asked the Spanish to go with Friday's help to the canoe. We wanted to take them to our house. However, Friday was young and strong. He had a lot of power. He just took the Spanish on his back and carried him to the canoe. Then he carefully put him inside the canoe. Chapter 26 Dinner. When the Spanish was inside the canoe, Friday jumped out of the canoe and he pushed it along the beach. We soon reached the place where I saved Friday. Friday helped our new guests out of the canoe, but they weren't able to walk. We had to carry our guests to our home. We had another problem when we reached our house. Friday's father and the Spanish couldn't go over the fence. I thought about the solution. I wanted to pull them over the fence. But then I realized that the cannibals were already gone. We could stay outside the fence. We made a tent for our guests outside the fence. We prepared soft beds for them, too. When we finished this, I started cooking dinner. Friday brought some fish and we cooked the fish quickly. We had dinner together in the tent. Friday translated for me because the Spanish could speak Friday's language. I asked Friday to go back to the beach after the dinner. He brought back the weapons which we left in a hurry. I also asked him to bury the bodies of the killed cannibals the next day. He did as I said. I spoke with Friday's father the next morning. I wanted to know what he thought about the cannibals. I asked, will they return? Will they attack us? He said, they will probably never attack us. The guns created a great shock. They couldn't understand how we won. I heard them shout that you and Friday were spirits sent from heaven. I still worried that the cannibals could return. But it never happened. When our guests were strong enough, I began to think about the journey by sea. Again, I asked the Spanish about his arrival on these islands. He said that he was on a ship which went to Havana. There were 16 Europeans on Friday's island. They were Spanish and Portuguese. He told me that the storm broke the ship near my island. They saved themselves in a boat. Now they lived with Friday's people. I asked the Spanish if they tried to make another sea journey. Of course, they wanted to go home, but they had no tools to build a ship. I showed the Spanish the tools which I had from the ship. He said that with my tools it was possible to build a ship. I thought that the Spanish and Friday's father could return to their island. They could tell other Europeans about the possibility to build a ship. Together we could go to Brazil or Havana or maybe Europe. However, the Spanish wanted something else. He said, "It will be better if we wait for half a year. There isn't enough food for 16 other men on the island. We won't have enough food to eat when we build the ship." I agreed with him. He and Friday's father helped us expand the fences and fields. We caught more goats. We increased the number of goats to 50 animals. We collected a lot of fruit. Then we dried the fruit. We also started preparing the materials for the ship. We chose a few trees. I showed the others how to cut the trees. Then we formed them into long and thin pieces. In half a year, we had a lot of food. We had a lot of corn. We needed more baskets and pots for the corn. We saw that the Spanish was very good at making baskets. He had a great talent. His baskets were excellent. He also used a special technique to make baskets. The technique was fast and effective. He made the baskets 3 times faster than me. I asked him to teach me his skill. I wasn't as fast as him, but I was faster than before. Chapter 27 Englishman. We put all the food in my cave. It was safe there. Then the Spanish and Friday's father could go back. They could bring the other men here. We gave them food and 4 guns in case they were attacked again. Then they took the canoe and they went away. 2 days passed since they left when something unexpected happened. I was woken up by Friday at about 6 o'clock in the morning. "Are they here?" I asked Friday. He said, "Not yet. But somebody else is here." I saw a boat. I went to the top of the nearest hill. I saw the boat. It was clear that these people weren't the friends who we expected. The boat came from a completely different direction. I could also see a ship. I knew this shape. The ship was English. I was confused. It was true that I was happy to see Englishmen after 27 years on the island. But I was also worried. The island wasn't near ways of English ships. Also, there were no storms recently. So why were they here? Maybe the men were pirates. Maybe they wanted to hide something on the island. I decided to be very careful. Friday and I stayed hidden and we watched the visitors for a while. The boat came to the beach and I counted 11 men. Soon I saw that they were all Englishmen. 3 of the men had hands tied together. The 8 other men took them to the beach. 2 prisoners were calm, but the 3rd prisoner tried to say something. He looked very scared. He asked the men in the boat for something. When Friday saw this, he turned to me and told me that Englishmen also ate people. I told him that they definitely didn't plan to eat the prisoners. I thought that they wanted to shoot them. After a while I noticed that this wasn't their plan. The men from the boat started to explore the island. The 3 tied prisoners sat on the beach with 2 men as guards. The prisoners looked hopeless. I remembered my arrival on the island. I also felt lost first, exactly like those prisoners. Low tide came soon. The level of the sea was low. Their boat was on the sand. They couldn't move the boat. I heard them shout to each other, "We will leave with the next high tide." This gave us some hours. Friday and I stayed hidden until dark. Then I noticed that the men who stood the guard started to sleep. The 3 prisoners sat under a tree quite close to us. It looked like they were also quite far from the other sailors. We could come closer to them. When we were very close to the prisoners, I spoke quietly to them. We were still hidden behind the trees and they couldn't see us. When they heard my voice, they couldn't believe that somebody spoke English to them from the dark forest. "What was that?" asked one of the men. "I heard something." "I heard a tree speak," answered the other. "But it's impossible. A tree can't speak English." "Yes, you heard something but it's not a tree," I said quietly. "My name is Robinson Crusoe. I'm an Englishman. I live on this island. I will help you if you tell me who you are." After the first shocking moment, one man answered my question. He was the captain of the ship, but some of the sailors criticized him and they started a rebellion. His assistant and 1 passenger became prisoners. The other sailors wanted to leave them here to die. The captain said, "The truth is that there are only 2 dangerous sailors who control the others in the group. 80% of them are still loyal to me. If the leaders are caught, the rest will return under my control." Chapter 28 Control. I said, "I'm willing to help you but I have one condition. I want full control over the ship if we manage to get it back." The captain and the other 2 prisoners agreed and they gave me full control over the ship and over their lives. We freed the prisoners. Then we went back to the forest. I gave them guns and we started planning the attack. In the middle of our conversation, we noticed that the sailors who stood guard were woken up. They stood up. They shouted to 3 other men who were near to them. At that moment, we shot the guards. Then the captain spoke to the 3 other men. He told the men to be loyal to him and help him get back to the ship. They agreed and we tied them and left them on the beach. The other 3 men who heard the shots came back. They saw that the situation changed. We were 5. We had a lot of guns. The situation was bad for them. They also agreed to be loyal to the captain. We tied these men too. We hid our 6 prisoners in the forest. Then I and the captain had finally time to talk to each other. I told him my story and he was shocked. He also thanked me a lot for my help. He and his 2 friends were hungry, so we went to my house. I showed them what I built during my years on the island. They were surprised by all things which I had. However, we didn't have much time to explore my home. We had to plan how to get back the ship. There were 16 people on board and we were only 5. First, we decided to take everything out of the boat.